Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is devise, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Luis. Luis, thank you so much for sharing yet another great idea with us. Now, let's spend a moment and review some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might encounter the verb devise can mean to plan or invent some kind of procedure, system or mechanism by careful thought. I love looking for real examples of our verb of the day in current periodicals. And a common phrase I saw again and again was to devise a plan. And it was used in a number of different settings, some in business, when an organization is having some kind of problem, right? And they're trying to plan or invent their way out of this. You might hear it used in kind of thrilling types of situations. So you might think of something that's been dramatized in a movie or a TV show where someone is trying to come up with something creative to solve some kind of problem or issue. Now, a second but less common way you might encounter the verb devise can mean to leave real estate to someone by the terms of a will. Now, if you happen to be an attorney or someone working near or in the legal field, then it is possible you might encounter this verb more regularly. But outside of that, you're probably not going to have as many examples of that. For now, you should know that devise is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, we're going to drop the E on the end before adding ing. And we're doing that because our verb ends in the pattern vowel consonant E. When I add that ing ending, it forms devising. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb ends in an E. Now listen carefully. This base verb, devise, it ends in a voiced sound. So you see the letter S, right? But what I hope you're hearing is more of a Z sound, a Z, okay? Because our verb devise ends in that voice sound, it means our ed ending is just going to make a D sound. We're not going to add an extra syllable when we say it. So the past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this: devised, devised. Okay? Now, I don't have any additional phrasal verbs that we need to study, so we can move on to doing a little verb tense practice. Today, we're going to make some sentences in the present progressive and the present perfect. Let's start with the present progressive. We can use this verb tense to describe actions that are happening now, or to describe actions that are in progress. Some teachers or textbooks will call this the present continuous, and that's just fine. It means exactly the same thing. I like saying present progressive because I try and remind my students that two P's mean you need two parts to make your verb. We'll be using a present form of be and then the ing form of the verb. Now, be has three forms in the present tense, so this means we have to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, then I'm going to use am and then that ing form the verb. But if the subject is you, we, or they, I'll use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form the verb. Finally, if my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use is, and then that ing form the verb. Let's take a look at a new example. The new president of the alumni board is devising a plan to create more engagement and forge more career paths. So again, we're talking about actions that are happening right now or actions that are in progress. And someone here maybe has a lot of great ideas about how alumni or graduates of a particular college or university can still be engaged with that school and maybe also do things that will advance their careers. That's what's being described in that sentence. Now let's take a look at a negative example. Again, we must pay attention to our subject whenever we're making sentences in the present progressive. So in the negative, we'll start with our subject. Then we're going to use the form of be that matches. So am, are, or is. Then we'll follow it with not, and then the ing form the verb. Here's another example. She isn't devising her farm to her descendants. Here's an example of a sentence going to that second definition. So we're talking about someone making a plan for real estate after their death, kind of like what's going to happen to it. That's what the sentence is describing. And it's possible that someone is working, or the subject here in the sentence, this individual's working on those plans right now. But I do want to point out that sometimes we can use present progressive to talk about the future. And this gets a little bit confusing. So really 3 ways to describe future actions. We make sentences with will and with be going to, most commonly in my videos, but there are times where this present progressive can work. So this might be for plans where we're extremely confident that it will occur. And so if someone is putting this in writing, they're having witnesses, it seems like this is a very certain plan. Now let's move on and make a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, you want to start with your form of be, whatever form matches the subject, that comes next, then use the ing form the verb. Here's the last example. Are you devising a plan to get us out of here? I feel like I've heard questions like this again in like suspenseful movies or TV shows. So again, somebody wants to know, are you creating, are you inventing a way out? Now let's move on and make some sentences in the present perfect. We can use this verb tense in a couple different ways. One way is to talk about actions that were completed in unknown time periods. So could have happened a day ago, might have happened 10 years ago, but it might just not matter when something occurred. Another way to use the present perfect is to talk about an action that started in the past and continues into the present. You'll notice present perfect also has 2 letter P's, and again, we're going to need 2 parts to make our verb. And this is yet another verb tense where we need to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, I'll use have, and then that participle form the verb. If my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use has, and then the participle form the verb. Let's take a look at an example. Engineers have devised a new way to deliver certain drugs in higher doses with less pain. So they have invented, they have created something new. Now let's look at negative present perfect sentences. To do this, again, we start with the subject, then we use either have not, and then the participle form the verb, or has not, and then the participle form the verb. Here's another example. Many companies haven't devised an organizational strategy when it comes to AI or artificial intelligence. So that kind of computer learning that is really the focus of so many big developments right now. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect. To do this, start with have or has, then you're going to have your subject, and then that participle form the verb. Here's the last example. Have you devised any clever hacks to learning a new language? So again, I hope you'll notice here, devising a plan, that was used twice, devising a new way, devising a strategy, devising a hack. Hack is usually described as like a more efficient way of doing something. So maybe making something quicker or easier to do. And that's what that question is all about there. Maybe if you have devised or come up with your own, or maybe invented your own way to increase the speed at which you're learning a new language, please share. Others watching this, I'm sure, would love to hear your ideas as well. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb devise. And the first word we're going to discuss today is the noun form of this word. The noun devise has the exact same pronunciation and the exact same spelling. The way we use this noun is connected to the second definition of the verb. So it could refer to one of three, but all three are sort of related meanings here. So one way to use it is to refer to the act of giving real property, right, through a will. Or a second way, it could be describing the will itself that disposes or passes along real property. Or it could be describing the property that has been devised by will. Okay, so again, all of those kind of interconnected meanings there, but it's all back to that idea of instructing or passing along real property through one's will or a legal document describing how certain assets should be either sold or passed to or shared with people after your death. So, an example of how you might hear this noun used in a sentence is, was the devise valid? So here it might be describing the act of giving. Maybe it's describing the will itself. Sometimes people try and forge or fake wills so that they receive something. So that question could have many different meanings, but it's all connected to that idea. I have one last thing for us to discuss today, and it's a little piece of advice, and it's something that's easily confused. So I want to caution you not to confuse this verb, devise, with the word device. Okay, and this is, I think, a perfect thing that captures English. So notice our verb devise is spelled with an S, but we're making a Z sound. And then the next word I'm going to talk to you about here is the noun device. It's spelled with a C, but you're going to pronounce it with an S sound, right? That makes total sense. So when you hear that noun device being used, it's many times describing something, a particular object that is made, or maybe it's adapted for some particular purpose. And many times it's referring to different pieces of either mechanical or electrical equipment. So an example, or a couple examples here, say all devices must be put away during the test. I've heard teachers that say many things like this that could refer to your cell phone, a tablet, maybe a smartwatch, right? So nothing electronic so that you're not tempted to look at something else. But you might also hear somebody ask, kind of like, what kind of measuring device did you use? And I apologize for the odd typo or odd spelling going on there, but again, it's just the noun form of this word. So its purpose, right, is to determine the quantity or the amount of something. Thanks again to Luis for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.